We are going to focus on building on the legacy and power of Black resistance. And I think the nation is learning about the necessity of resistance right now, but we're going to talk about what we can do in our little corners of the world. But like I said, it is always right and proper to start our activities by having an invocation. We want to welcome the spirit into the space. And so I am going to pass this over to Reverend Dr. Paul McAllister, who is our chair for the NCDP Interfaith Caucus. And so, Dr. McAllister, sir, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And shall we pray together? Our gracious Redeemer and God, we thank you for the privilege of sharing this evening. Thank you for these wonderful speakers and guests and those who have organized this marvelous event. We are thankful for the history of resistance within the Black tradition, for the Fannie Lou Hamers and for the Martin Luther Kings and the Asa Philip Randolphs and the Wilma Rudolphs. And we are thankful for the Martin Luther Kings and an innumerable list of persons whose names we could call, in whose tradition we are sitting and standing here today. Thank you for the spirit of resistance that we've seen all day long in those who have decided that they would not invest in a system that deprives others of justice. And we do pray that as we talk and discuss and learn, that we would listen as well. Be with us, and may your will be achieved in all that is said and done, for it is in the name of God, whose name we do not specifically call according to any tradition, but in the name of God, who is known by many names, we do pray. Amen.
Oh, thank you so much. Amen. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you said in whose name we don't call for any particular tradition. But I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute to acknowledge our Muslim brothers and sisters, because tonight starts the first night of Ramadan. And so we wish them a happy Ramadan season. Thank you so much, Dr. McAllister, for doing this. He did this all of our speakers did this at the last minute for me. And I appreciate it because they're in service to all of you as well. So thank you, sir. I so very much appreciate you for that. So we're going to go on to the next thing. And I know I said that we all are feeling this need for resistance right now. What's happening in DC is insane. In fact, I have to make sure I let you know that Congresswoman Valerie Foushee was meant to join us tonight, but she and the other Democrats are up there fighting tyranny at the 60,000 foot level. And so we wish them all the best in that fight as they're doing that work for all of us across the country. But it is no less a feat for us here in the state. And so we're going to get some insight here from Sidney Batch. Senator Sidney Batch is not just a dear friend of mine and not just a fellow social worker, but she just became very recently, it was at the end of December, beginning of December, I believe, just became the new leader for the Senate Democratic Caucus. And I am so excited. Congratulations, Senator Batch, on that wonderful achievement. So how's the crown fitting right now, ma'am?
Well, given the fact that we are talking about important things like DEI, I am the first woman in this role, first Black woman in this role, and y'all, the Democratic Party actually, until recently, actually ran everything. So it's sad that I'm happy that I'm in this position. It's also sad it took till 2025. I also am proud to have the first female chief of staff in North Carolina history who's also representing me. So it's been busy. People are excited, but there's a lot of work to do.
Well, I am so glad. You're right. It shouldn't have taken that long, especially since we were the ones running that and we believe in those things. So I don't know what happened there, but I'm glad we finally got it right and that we got it right with you because you're such a phenomenal leader and legislator. And so in that vein, I know that there are two bills in particular that have given me a lot of pause. House 127 and 171. I wonder if we might take those in turn. What are they? What are they trying to do with these things? And what is the delegation's plan to resist? So can you tell us about, we'll start with 127.
Yeah, sure. So what we're dealing with right now with 127 is actually a voter registration drive form. So it's new legislation, as you guys know, and I will remind everyone because it feels good to say this, is that at the end of the election in November, more North Carolinians voted for Democrats than they did Republicans. But because of at the statewide level and in our legislative races, the issue, of course, is political gerrymandering. And what they saw with razor thin margins in multiple races that we saw both in the House and the Senate, with the House breaking the supermajority, and the Senate holding on to our seats, is that at the end of the day, they are trying to figure out every single way to undermine fair elections and to register voters. So we have so far at least, we have energy behind us. The Republicans are all reeling with regards to what's happening with Trump and Musk. And of course, the Republicans are terrified of what 26 looks like. So this bill is an effort to ensure that now the voter drives that we have historically used, both Republican and Democrat, that are nonpartisan and for nonpartisan groups, are no longer going to be able to be used. So you can no longer register voters at a voter registration drive. They have, of course, at the end of last year, removed the Board of Elections into the auditor's office because that doesn't make any sense, except for the fact that the auditor, of course, is a Republican. And one of the most damning parts of that is Brent Woodcox is actually someone who used to work on the Senate side on the Republican in Senator Berger's office. He is one of the most divisive individuals that is in the building. He's now at the auditor's office and he will be over elections. So we should be extremely concerned about that move. This bill specifically started in the House. I assume that it might get some steam given who's actually on, well, actually this bill will probably not get steam based on the actual primary the primary sponsors on the bill. But what it would do is mean that in the future, the only thing that you would be able to have at a voter registration drive is you can't have the forms. You can just have one sheet of paper that was provided by the State Board of Elections that is now going to be overseen by Republicans to say how you can vote, but you cannot assist them in doing so. And this is one of the many and most undemocratic parts of what Republicans will continue to do to try and steal our votes and make it much more difficult for us to cast our ballots and to be registered in the first place.
And so even though this is going to disenfranchise pretty much anybody who has not yet registered, including on their own side of the aisle, there is likely to be a disproportionate impact on communities of color and low wealth communities, or am I overstating that?
No, you're absolutely right, Anne, of second English speakers, right? Like, so if you're not a native English speaker, it's going to be even harder as well, because many of these drives are in places where we actually have bilingual speakers. Don't know that they're going to provide multiple forms. My district is 38%, AAPI. And there are so many different languages. So the Board of Elections is not going to probably translate it into every single language that we need. So you're absolutely right. I think what we should also keep an eye out for is that there's already conversations in the Senate about changing the 3-day rule with regards to when your provisional or your ballot can actually be cast, whether it has to be there, whether they're going to get rid of and change the provisional requirements. And so that's what ended up helping us win all of our votes. And what you see with Justice Riggs' race, they're trying to figure out how to do that. So this is just the first lob across the aisle at us. And I have no doubt it'll get much worse.
So that terribleness notwithstanding, also I'm proud to be both a member of the 92%, but also the 68,000 that Jefferson Griffin is very worried about, and he should be. So I'm on the list. But then there's 171. Tell us what that terrible bill also is.
So interestingly, I'm hoping that this bill doesn't move. There's a weird tension right now between the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans. They are infighting. The House is sort of coming off of its wheels in the fact that they have a new speaker and people are really frustrated with him. He doesn't show up to necessarily all of the events. There's been pushback in his caucus. Some people feel like he was given the crown that he didn't work for or earn because it was, of course, Speaker Moore. So I don't know that this bill will actually move forward because the Senate has made it clear that they're trying to stay away from more divisive issues, interestingly enough, because some of them say that they now know that the House actually has the ability to veto the governor. So they're trying to make sure in a budget cycle that we don't have a lot of extra money. 500 million is the forecast that we will have extra, which is unheard of in these day and time for how low it's been as time has said in the past, is that we're in the situation right now, at least, that they're trying to, in the Senate, appease to the extent that they can and work with Governor Stein. So I hope that this dies, but this bill, if it were to go ahead and get legs, is just like what you would expect in every other aspect that you've seen at the federal level. The Republicans are just taking the federal playbook and they're filing bills, regardless of how extreme their caucuses are. Number of these members are in the Freedom Caucus. We should not be surprised in the House. None of these bills have not been filed in the Senate. There's not companion bills. So I'm hoping that it will just die there and not even get a committee hearing. Neither have gotten a committee hearing. There's no bill summary, which is a good sign so far. What I would say that this bill actually ends up doing is telling that state agencies cannot use DEI in any of their hiring, in any of their decisions, in any of their training, et cetera. It's basically just absolutely getting rid of any type of policy, regardless of if it has any value. The interesting part is that there are aspects of it that are going to likely be challenged constitutionally. And so there are aspects that say anyone can actually challenge whether or not somebody was hired or fired. And we see this at the federal level when women are being hired who have disproportionately over the course of time have benefited from policies like this. They are being challenged at the federal level, and bosses are saying, why did you hire a woman? Is this a DEI policy, right? Are you hiring the most capable person? Well, if we've, as a Black woman, I've had to work 10 times harder in most things. So if you hire me, then it's probably because I might be overqualified for the job, but
Correct.
my gender and my color says otherwise. So this bill will prevent all government agencies from having any type of DEI policies, and it will allow any person in the state of North Carolina to sue based on someone else not getting a job, or somehow some other person getting injured, or some policy passing, et cetera. So it just opens up the door for anyone who's upset because of whoever they are to go ahead and file a lawsuit and spend our tax dollars unnecessarily on nonsense. And that's what this is about. So hopefully this will not pass, but ultimately we're going to see bills like this that are going to probably be filed and hopefully just not move.
Well, let's hope, because I know that both of these come with a penalty as a misdemeanor. So not only is it no longer permitted, but it is now illegal to do these things. And so that just reeks of the desperation that they have to hold on to whatever little sliver of power that they had. Now, those are the two that were keeping me up at night here recently. Are there any other ones that we should absolutely be looking toward that even you are really concerned about?
So as for bills, no. As for policies, yes. I think that with what I would flag for you all is trying to put pressure, especially on the Republicans, regarding the fact that Medicaid expansion is about to implode. And we have what's called trigger language. So FMAP, which is the portion of the federal share, if that goes up, if that goes down anymore and our state share goes up even by a small percentage, we have language that immediately bans it. I believe, and I have talked to, and we have heard from Republicans, that they have no appetite in making sure that that expansion population remains. So 600,000 North Carolinians, after an entire decade of waiting and dying, frankly, are going to be in a position where they're going to lose health insurance and they will not have that access because the legislature and the Republicans said, we're not going to go ahead and fund it, even if it's just $1 more. They do not have the appetite. They are not interested. And so that's one of the bigger concerns. I will also say that there is some rumor, and I hope that this is not the case, God help us all, that perhaps the school voucher money, of course, almost $1 billion at this point that's going to private school vouchers of our tax money, might also be expanded to childcare. And if that's the case, then we are going to absolutely be in a deficit. So many public schools are already losing money because of the federal policies, which we are losing so much money. Even you've seen your school systems, $25 million in some school systems, just losing it because of the policies that are happening at the federal level. And last but not least, I would like to also tell you all that almost 50% of our state budget, and estimate 50% of our state revenue, is federal dollars. So if Congress goes and takes an axe to what they have done already, and they go ahead and they cut everything, then we will be at a deficit and we will have to make very difficult decisions to go ahead and cut programs. And so that's one of the things that I would also ask for you guys to continue to keep your eye on.
So I know you got to run because you're extremely busy, and we know that. So I won't keep you much longer, but I do want to know, we've got a bunch of sets of eyes on here right now. What can any of the folks who are like, I can't believe this is an outrage, what can they do? What can regular folks do to make an absolutely critical and important impact in trying to push back against some of this stuff? How can we resist?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. So fortunately, earlier this year, Leader Reeves, myself, and Chairwoman Clayton got together and started talking about how we as Democrats can go ahead and be united our caucuses with a message to Democrats and to other individuals and change our messaging because we've got a big tent. We got to bring a whole lot of other people in to, of course, combat the political gerrymandering. What I would say is we would need your help in that effort. And over the next month or so, you'll hopefully hear from us with regards to what that plan is. In the meantime, with regards to the building, there are two important things that I'd ask you all to do. One is if we are remaining silent on something, do not assume that our silence is because we don't care. It also is because we work very closely with with the governor's staff, with the attorney general's office, that we're going to be in litigation a lot. They are actually just filed a bill in the Senate to go ahead and prevent Attorney General Jackson from filing any bills that the legislature deems or challenging any executive orders that they don't agree with, right? So at the end of the day, we sometimes remain silent because there's a litigation strategy or things that we don't want to do to flag for Republicans how to fix a bill to make it easier for them to win on appeal. So one, give us grace, assume that we're doing the right thing and not just being silent. The other thing that I would say is the most impactful way with regards to Republican districts to make them start thinking that it actually matters to them is to find your independent and Republican friends in the places that you live and you have them contact their legislators. I know that some Republicans have told me they look up registration first. They determine whether or not it's a voter that probably voted for them, and then they respond accordingly. And so if we can go ahead and we can call in some of our other brethren that are actually in a position in which they are losing a lot, especially our farmers who have now all of a sudden who have had USAID help and all of their crops were going to USAID and now they have crops that are dying in the field. Well, they're actually really angry. And they said, I didn't think that was going to happen to me. We need to figure out who those individuals are, and we need them to actually go ahead and hold their Republican counterparts accountable. So that's the work that I'd ask for you guys to do. We can be loud, we can be proud. And I always say, if we're going to lose, we're going to lose loudly. I would also ask that you guys find other individuals who have a whole lot of impact in those Republican districts and make them make those calls.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving us this insight. It's a lot, it's a lot coming at everybody, and sometimes it's just hard to make sense of all the numbers and the bills and where do I even begin. So this is very helpful to break these things down for us and know how we can help you out. So thank you, Senator, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody do this.
Guys.
Do this. This is how the people in the deaf community applaud. So we now know that there are things that we can do to help out at the federal level. I am a social worker, and so I am always going to be community centric. And so now we're going to come from the 30,000 foot level a little bit further down, although on some level it's going way higher up. As a researcher whose area of research is religion and spirituality, I am always going to want to have a conversation that includes some measure of a faith component. And this is less about the theological and more about the institutional, perhaps, but really excited to have a conversation now about faith and civic involvement. If any of you know, I did a 30-county tour around Eastern North Carolina, and I found some really interesting things out during that time around the engagement of faith-based communities. And so I'm excited to have a talk partner with me tonight, the Reverend B.J. Gibson, who is the senior pastor of Nazareth Missionary Baptist Church. Hello, Reverend Gibson, how are you?
Good evening, Dr. Hardy, and to everyone who has joined. This is so refreshing to see so many people who've joined us. So grateful to be here and have this opportunity for us to chat just a little bit.
Yes, just a little bit, because I know that you also have listen, all the busiest people in North Carolina took some time to join us tonight. So I appreciate that, which is why I'm going to jump right in. I'm not going to keep you. So when I went out to a lot of the eastern counties, there were larger churches that were involved in overt civic engagement, not necessarily democratic things, but things like voter registration drives or passing out information or having candidates come into the church. But in a lot of the smaller and very rural spaces, the pastors were afraid to do anything because they felt like they would get in trouble. They would lose their tax status as a tax exempt organization, or some just didn't even know where to begin. I wonder if, given the historic role that the Black church has played in civic engagement, where do you see it now? And how can we go back to that space?
Unfortunately, I think what you said is accurate on so many levels, not only for the smaller churches, but I found that even some of our larger churches have started to veering away from civic engagement. Let's not even talk about political engagement, but just civic engagement, and not wanting to take part in those things. And I think there are a number of things. I do think that there is some fear of retaliation. I never understood really where that came from. I've been pastoring, this is my 20th year, and I don't know any church that's ever been affected directly because of their engagement. I don't know of any. I'm sure there are some, but so when I hear churches who say that, it kind of makes me uneasy because, where are you hanging that? But, a lot of churches are blaming on the separation of church and state. We want to make sure that we keep the two separated. Um, I think that's part of the reason that we find ourselves in the situation that we're in a lot of things nationally on the state level, especially in our local communities. I think our churches have taken a back seat on situations that need us to take a front seat. If we look back over history of our nation and our state, it has been the churches have been the heartbeat of organizing, advocacy, mobilization. And I think because our churches have backed up from those things for various reasons, and I'll talk about those in a moment that I feel, but I think because we've taken a back seat, we find ourselves now with voter apathy, civic apathy. People are not engaged because I think, number one, I think the church oftentimes forgets because of the things that we're dealing with ourselves that people still respect the church. And I think sometimes when our attendance is low, we're trying to recover from COVID still. We're trying to get people to church, to Bible study, people to sing on the choir. So it's kind of, we don't want to deal with these things because, these religious, spiritual things are of more importance. I think churches need to still remember that there are still people who may never come to church, but they're watching what our church does. And the example is today was the blackout. I was just busy, hadn't posted on our church's Facebook page, but once I did, I started getting lots of text messages saying, Pastor, we were waiting to see if our church was participating. We wanted to know where you were at. So and these are not always people who are in our congregation on Sundays. They still want to know, what does the church have to say about DEI? What does the church have to say about the bill that Senator Hardy just talked about? And so I think we've got to make sure that we realize our place is still important, that we are still the heartbeat and the center of what's going to happen to the future of our community.
I have often said that you will not get the pew without the pulpit. And so it is to me very important that we engage with pastoral leaders. Do you see either community groups, the C3 grassroots folks, the party at the county level, whatever, are they coming to you all to say, hey, let's partner, let's do this together? Or are you and your colleagues feeling like the onus is on us and we have to do it all alone?
So in my particular community, I think Cynthia Wallace is on, and I'm not just saying it because she's on, but I'm saying it because it's true. We, during the last election cycle, were able to partner with Democracy North Carolina, with the Black Alliance, with Rural Project. They would take on the leadership because they have more resources than we have, but they ask us for simple things. Can you all fry some fish? We've got men in our church who love to fry fish. Yeah, we can fry the fish. Can your vans run? Absolutely. Because there was a time my van ran on Sunday mornings to pick people up to come to church. They're not running for that anymore because people aren't coming like that. So yeah, give me a reason to run my van. Absolutely. And every time that happened, we put our vans out. There were a few volunteers who were willing to knock on doors. So it was refreshing for us to not have to feel like we had to plan it all. We just need to take this part and make it work. So, no, I don't feel like we're alone. And parishioners need to be more vocal, I think, with their leadership about how important this is. Because I think sometimes pastors are afraid. They don't know if the members really want to get involved. I don't know if my members want me to talk about this. I don't know how comfortable they'll be with that. But I think if we start engaging our leadership of our churches, our pastors specifically, because as you just said, you cannot get the pew without getting the pulpit. Say what you want to say, do what you want to say. You have got to get that spokesperson, that person who leads that congregation on board. And I think congregants can help with that as they have those conversations to engage their pastoral leaders about, how they feel about it.
Okay, that is good to hear. Now, I know that you were actually also an elected official. And so I'd like to round out our time with two questions. The first one is, what made you say, because, like you said, some people are like, oh, the separation of church and state. And yet you took the ownership to run for and hold an office as a county commissioner. What were you worried that anyone was going to say, oh, now you crossed the line? What was the impetus to do that, even given the separation that folks are talking about and are worried about?
So I served before I became a county commissioner. I served 11 and a half years as a school board member.
Mm,
Um, and so when I ran for school board, times were a little different. And I mean, although it wasn't a long time ago, it was 15 years ago, and things were a little different. I mean, the church had a different role then. People were more open to that. I still have colleagues who tell me now that I'm not an elected official. I'm glad you're not. I hope you won't run again. These are colleagues, but I have people in our community who are saying, we need you there, because one of the things we know is that beyond being a politician, you are a servant. You have a heart for doing what's right. You're gonna ring the bell for justice and righteousness at all times. And that's what we need. We need more people who are gonna have the right heart over politics. And so I encourage those who are, a part of the religious community to still consider taking leadership roles and running for office, because we need people there who are not only articulate, who are not only smart, but we need more people who have the right heart. Who
mm,
will say, regardless of what the issue is, we want to love and do right and love righteously, by people. I think that's what we need more leadership. So when I ran, I had support, and those who were in the background saying what they had to say, the fight was more important than what they were saying, and so I knew my congregation supported me, and they still do. When I ran for school board, our church was fully committed. When I ran for county commissioner, the church community was fully committed, because they know that where my heart is.
mhm. And so, and it is, anybody who knows you knows, I know that you actually are a real public servant. Like, servant leadership is clearly your calling. So then I'll end it with this. What then, for all the eyes that are watching right now, who are like, I don't know what I could do, what I should do. Like you said, go talk to my pastor. How do I get involved in this work at this level as just a person sitting in the pew? What's your advice?
Got you. If I can, let me go back and respond to one of the comments, who asked about using indivisible platform. One of the things I will say is, again, we've got to remember that there are people watching the church who are not in the church. And so social media platforms and all of those type platforms, I think, are to be used to our advantage, for us to be willing to state our position, to state our claim, and make sure that we're not quiet again about those things that matter. Now, to answer your question, I think what I was saying earlier is so important. Having those conversations in your choir meetings, in your missionary meetings, in the deacon board meeting, to start having those conversations that say, Pastor, what are we doing about this? Are we concerned about that? Are we going to do a voter registration drive because it's not banned yet, so we can still do it? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you got to be willing to push the button, because one of the good things about church is there's a crowd already there. It may not be the
Mhm.
biggest crowd, but there's a crowd already there. So those small conversations amongst those people who are the movers and shakers in the church, I think, is important, because if it gets to the right people, it'll catch traction and the church will start getting involved. I think that's very important. And just making sure that we understand that we do have a role to play. And God is not going to be mad at us because we have voter registration drives and come by here, good Lord. He's okay with both of them.
Right.
It's okay. Um, and being truthful about what the word says as relates to those things. I think
Mhm.
we allow what other people have to say, and what the world has to say, without us being honest and truthful about what does the word of God say. about
Mhm.
our role in these type things, because the word is very clear that we are to make sure that the government rests upon his shoulders,
Mhm.
and that we're not telling people. One of the things I think that we do wrong in church is tell people the Lord will make a way somehow. The Lord will take care of it. He will, but He has given us the ability. He has given us the resources so that we can make a difference while the Lord does His part. Because faith without works
Mm.
is dead. You can pray all
Yes.
day, but if you're not voting, your prayers amount to nothing. And that's
Mm.
one of the things that I've had to try and help preachers around me and pastors around me understand, that if we don't lead them, a lot of times they won't go. And so there were times I asked people if you'll go knock on doors, and they weren't going. So you know what I had to do? I said, "Hey, meet me. We're gonna go knock on doors."
Mhm.
And the fight for me is not just when I'm in office. Of course, Cynthia Wallace is here, who knows our community well, and the others. Even if I'm not on the ballot, I'm active in civic engagement. Not That's just going to happen. Now, after this last election, I said I wasn't running anymore. I was done. But I've got 5 children who are coming up, and I want to make sure that I'm always a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And so I just
Mhm.
encourage those, as I close, because I don't want to take up too much time. I encourage those who are listening to push the button,
Mm.
push the button,
Push the button.
push the button. When they're praying, before they pray, talk about civic engagement, push the button. When they want to talk about feeding the homeless, let's feed them, but let's take voter registrations with us.
Mm. I
When
love that.
talking about the choir rehearsing, yes, the choir needs to rehearse, Pastor, but if we're not careful, we're going to be taken back to Jim.
Mhm.
We're going to be taken back to the 1960s. Open our churches up for people to meet when they need to meet. I said our Democratic Party, when you're meeting, if you need a space, open the doors so that people have a place that they can come to do what really matters.
I love it. I couldn't ask another question that would end it any better than that. Pastor, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yes,
This
ma'am.
has been so helpful. I hope everybody, and there's questions in the chat. I know it will get them out to you, because I do know that I think you have to beat a hasty retreat right now, and that's okay. But we're so grateful that you took the time to talk with us tonight. So thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
We delivered a word, y'all. We delivered a word. We'll be passing a virtual plate later on. So, where did this idea come from? This idea to do this event, not just because it was Black History Month, but because I, along with so many other thousands of people across the country on Monday, watched Joy Reid give the last episode of her show on MSNBC. And that was a real challenge, because she's the first Black woman to ever to anchor a time show on cable news. And it looks a lot like MSNBC and a lot of other what they call legacy media, the big major networks, are obeying in advance. And the only people who seem to be paying the penalty for that are Black and brown folk. And so I thought it was very important to have a conversation about Black owned media, about Black centered conversations. But I don't need to be the one who's the voice of this. So for the rest of the presentation, the rest of the time we're together, I'm just going to be introducing people that I know are doing amazing work in these various areas. And I'm going to let them have the conversation with each other and with you. And so I'm so excited to introduce, oh my God, so excited, Payron Baxter, who is the co-host of, the co-host of the Radical Roots podcast. And he co-hosts it with his friend Ram Bakari, who I think is on here, but is not necessarily going to be able to join us today because he's on daddy duty. And I understand that. But also Dr. William Munn, another guy that I'm just crazy about, who's the chair of Polk County, who himself actually hosted 2 podcasts, one for his county and another centering young Black youth. So, gentlemen, I'm so glad to see both of your faces on here today. But I'm going to let you take the conversation from here, and I'm going to fade into the background. Take it away, fellas.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting us. Dr. Hardy was one of our first guests, and thank you for speaking with me as well, William. It's great meeting you as well.
So my pleasure. My pleasure. Looking forward to the conversation, man.
Yeah. So I know for us, I'm a county chair, but I knew for me, I had to create a space that, you know, we could just talk, you know, because sometimes I feel like, especially as a county chair, we get a lot of talking points from, you know, Raleigh or from DC, and it sometimes it really resonate with our community. It doesn't really resonate with the younger community. It doesn't really resonate with the more progressive community. And that's where I really kind of got the impetus to start our show. We're on episode coming up 15. We've had Anderson on, we've had Dr. Hardy on, we've had Elijah on, and last night we had on freshman rep Jordan Lopez. So
Nice.
again, like, you know, we're getting there, brother. You know, trying to get there. You know, so it's been pretty good. But tell me a little bit about your experience as well with your show, your podcast, and where you got your impetus to start a show.
Yeah, same thing, man. From Eastern North Carolina, and I love barbecue. I love football, soccer, but I also love the Black experience. And I felt like my first podcast is called the Black East Podcast. I did it with my best friends Ashley Daniels and Ramel Brooks. But at the time he was going through graduate school, I had finished up graduate school. We were just talking about Black life in Eastern North Carolina,
Yeah.
our experiences. We had a couple of city council folk on from Fayetteville, but then we also had some of my friends from high school, and one particular episode was about the white flight from our high school, for our middle school / high school class, and how impactful that was in the racism and all the impacts that surrounded it in Eastern North Carolina. And so it was something that was just absolutely fascinating. It was a wide-ranging, a conversation or a bevy of conversations. But yeah, it was about lifting up our experience and lifting up our brilliance. And I feel like, with everything that's going on, I feel like social media and the podcast experience and platform is such an incredible opportunity for us to uplift and tell our story. There's absolutely
Right.
nothing now that can get in our way to show our brilliance, to show our love, to show our connectiveness as a community, and just share that with the world. And I'm so excited that we have these venues, and so happy to hear the amazing things you're doing down there, down 74.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and I think it's like for me, I was always the type of guy that I think I was pretty good with like the rhetorical judo, right? And I know one thing as we're trying to combat this right wing kind of deluge of nonsense is, they're pretty good at their rhetoric, or they at least are all in line with it, right? Like right now we're seeing at the federal level it's waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse, and they're all saying it, right? And I'm like, if Dems could kind of get on one page and say one thing that could kind of counteract that. So I came up with something. I said, we should say taxes, tariffs, and terminations. Taxes, tariffs, and terminations. Taxes, tariffs, and terminations. Because that's really what they're offering. They're offering higher taxes. They're offering higher prices passed on to you. And guess what? They cutting your job.
Cutting your job, they're cutting your way of life. And look, they don't offer anything in the realm of joy. They don't offer anything in the realm of the future.
Right.
And after a while, that's got to be exhausting, right? And I think that Dems have, particularly statewide, have a unique opportunity to offer a long-term strategy to build a multiracial economy, a multiracial democracy where everybody can benefit. Because folks are gonna get tired of this real quick. They're gonna get tired of the firing. They're gonna get tired
We're
of
already
this.
saying it.
Yeah, they're going to burn out. And so I'm really excited, for your platform and for other platforms to start to lay the groundwork for the future moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's important that we make things pretty plain and simple. As the late Joe Madison used to say, you got to put it to where the goats can get it, right? Put it
Right.
right there, right?
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, he was, oh my God, God rest his soul. So
Yeah,
amazing. I used to listen to him going down. I think, again, I'm glad you brought his name up. I think him, doing that for so many years, before the podcasting, before the huge social media piece, we're then able to sort of, so it gave me the confidence to say, I can go out there and say what I want to say.
yeah.
Absolutely.
It's important, right? I mean, like right now, folks are afraid to have all these DEI conversations, right? It's these corporations, and I'm like, if we could just let them know that none of this stuff has any, they're not self-executing. There's no enforcement mechanism. You're doing this because he's writing it on a piece of paper, right? So he's saying we're getting rid of DEI and that's the way it's got to be, you know. Or he said that, like today, the language of America is English. That doesn't mean people aren't speaking other languages, right? So you don't have to give into that, right? And DEI is here because of the GOB, the Good Old Boys Club, right? So if we start kind of giving folks some barbs to go back on, like, hey, you know, we have DEI because y'all had GOB.
That's right. That's right. No, we had a long and sad history in this country, and no one wants to go back. I like what you say about putting it plain, because like when you start really speaking to what that reality is, that's frightening. I mean, and demystifying and breaking down the coded language, because what it is, DI is coded language. It's a dog whistle for racists who are terrified of prosperity for all people, right? Because then that evens the playing field. Someone once told me that equity is oppression for those who have been used to privilege, right? So I think
Right.
we have to be able to say, and I'm one of those folk who look. I'm 44 years old, and I'm done with the niceties. I look, you
Yeah.
did racist. You're a racist. If you're someone who has issues, we gotta call it what it is, and then move on and build with folk who are willing to build this country back, build this country into what its true potential could be.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as we're talking about this idea of diversity and equity and inclusion, I tell folks quite often, you know, when you erase everything that isn't white nationalism, all you have left is white nationalism. And that's their goal, right? And if we're not saying that because we're too afraid, because, you know, they're making you feel bad to care about other people, whether it be black people, whether it be poor people, whether it be queer people, whether it be women, whether it be immigrants. And it's like, if your politics has us throwing away a certain subsect of people, you might need to reassess your politics. But we have to understand the politics of white supremacy is always about divide and conquer. It's always about saying certain people should not have. And do you think, as we're hurting these people, as you try to defend them, you're the problem? And we kind of have to not lean into that. And I feel like from the, maybe not the state level, but definitely from the federal level, there is this recalcitrant, you know, posture towards pushing back on some of that stuff. And I'm like, we don't have to do that. We don't have to check our morals because we're trying to catch up on the same, you know, it's always the same not Republic, but suburban white women that we're still trying to find. I think the Democratic Party needs to be okay with saying, hey, you know what? Our floor with white voters might be for that 45%. And that's okay.
It's okay.
That's all right.
Right. And build from there. No, I really appreciate what you're saying, and particularly the place where we call it what it is, because I think that in order to subscribe to sort of this white supremacist mind frame, you lose humanity.
That's right.
You're sitting there cheering for people to lose their jobs. You're losing humanity. You're losing a part of your human experience. For what? And so I think a lot of people need to get busy and go see their therapist, because they're losing part of their human experience.
Right.
Ideology that in the end of the day is going to leave you with absolutely nothing. And I'm forgetting I cannot believe I'm forgetting my man's name. He wrote The Fire Next Time.
James Baldwin.
So James Baldwin had a quote. He says, people cling to their hates stubbornly, and I'm just going to screw this quote up, because when they release them, they're left with the pain, and a lot of people are hurting. But instead, my father-in-law is a pastor, and he says, hurt people.
That's right.
People need to admit they're hurting, but not to export that hatred in the form of policy that's going to hurt other people. It makes no sense, and you lose who you are, and we shouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, and I think we have to acknowledge that we're at a point where folks, or I should say that the conservative ideology has always been, it's always a self-loathing ideology, right? So that means that, like, they always have to have an enemy, because if they ever just pause for a second, they would say, okay, why do I need to hate other people? But once we get rid of this minority, once we get rid of that group of people, once we get rid of these people who I don't know, and those people, and, you know, the country's looking different from what I understand, and there's no more John Waynes, and I can't go buy a house off a high school diploma, and I was promised that. My granddaddy had that, and this is what we're fighting against in those same black women of the 92% who had to deal with the brunt and the underbelly of this country. They got educated, and they went into corporate America, and they took those jobs, and now they're saying, wait a minute now. And so this is the galvanizing, coalescing hate that we have to identify. Because if we're not going to identify it, we don't know where we are to be able to go forward from that. And one thing I always try to tell our our more palm-colored friends is that y'all got to talk to y'all people. Because that's what it is. Because I don't know any MAGA folks. I know Senator Batch earlier said we got to find our MAGA folks in our neighborhoods. I mean, or not in our friend groups. I don't have any. And the folks that are in their base may be like a Kyle Rittenhouse, a Derek Chauvin, a George Zimmerman, those who are in the Republican base. So if you want me to go try to, perform my humanity in front of them, I don't know about that.
I don't think it's our job, and frankly, in that capacity, or even safe, honestly, for us to even to do that. And so I think, I think you're 100% right. I love how in the last 7 minutes we've been able to sort of break down these meaty topics, and so I think it's super important. Again, when I was talking with Dr. Hardy, I was talking to her about social media, and a lot of people think social media and they think Facebook, LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
That word social media is media. It's new media, and it's an opportunity for Black creators, Black brilliance, to be able to dissect. We're going to have a good time in the next 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get your podcast. I'm going to plaster it all over social media. I want everybody on this list to do the same thing. But social media gave us an opportunity to reflect our brilliance out to the entire world, and there's no limits, right? If we always talk about a meritocracy, but in the sense that you're awesome, you're a brilliant person, so you're going to shine. And so Black media has an opportunity to just be able to take these messages that we're talking about, break them down, and get them out there. And there's some beautiful stuff out there that memes, long form media, 30-second media, 10-second media that really hits the points hard. And I think using and leveraging all of those platforms is going to be just another one of our arms to liberation.
And the good thing is that we don't have to have the filters, right? We don't have to have some sort of CEO it's owned by a billionaire, and someone says, I don't know, the shareholders don't like what you're talking about white supremacy. Because at the end of the day, and my co-host, he's half Black, half Mexican, and I say, you know what? His name is Ram, and if you guys are out there, please subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify. We record on Thursdays and Sundays. But what I will say is this: is that for us in this country, we have our group that didn't ask to come here, and then with Ram and his Mexican half, and we have another group that was here that didn't ask y'all to come over here.
That's right.
And then they're going to lay at the feet of us all these issues with the system that they created. So this is why I'm so proud to be a part of the 80%. My wife is at the 92%. And brother, we're going to keep this thing going. I know Dr. Hardy said we're at time, but it was a pleasure speaking with you. And folks, if you're out there, please make sure that you sign up for our podcast.
Absolutely. You guys are amazing. We have put the links to all of these
Awesome.
other social platforms, and yours was at the top of the list. I made sure bring those guys back on, because I do want to ask a quick question of them before we move on to our next piece. So I definitely wanted to make sure I thanked y'all properly. I'm so grateful that you all did this. I've actually been interviewed by both of you for your podcast now, which is humbling. I can't believe
You got it, girl. You got it.
So I appreciate y'all. But what I want to know is, and I mean, everything y'all said was so important. I don't know if you've been seeing the chat. It's just been going crazy. And again, we have a ton of links for these and other platforms. Joy Reid already had a podcast before they took her show.
Mhm.
Her link is in there. Roland Martin is a stalwart supporter of
Black Star Network.
Media, the Black Star Network. So we put his links in there too. Tabitha talks politics. I mean, she is wild. Y'all should definitely watch hers, but hers is very good. And then there's Native Land Pod, which I am a huge fan of. When one of the three co-hosts is Tiffany Cross, who also had her show taken off of Legacy Media. So I'm going to borrow a little time from the back end of this thing so I can ask you guys, so why is it important? And this is like a generic question, because I know you guys are going to kill it. Why is it important to have Black-owned media? Why is it not enough to just say, okay, well, I'm only going to watch the Black and brown folk on CNN and MSNBC, and then I'm going to turn off the TV for everybody else? Why must it be FUBU, for us by us? Either one of you can take it, or both.
because legacy media is going to die. It's going to die, and we're going to have an opportunity to step into its void, much like Uber did with ride sharing, much like all the other disrupting technologies, and feel what people want, what's real. People don't want something that's not representative of America, of where this country is going. And Black media has, Joy Reid is going to, she did, by MSNBC letting her go, did that mean she lost any of her brilliance, lost any of her intellectual capacity? Absolutely not. She's
Right.
going to rise. And the beauty of YouTube, the beauty of all the other social media platforms, I'm mad with half of them, but all the beauty is that it's unrestricted, and we have the opportunity, and that's where people. I don't go to CNN. I go to other way. I go to other places. I'm cheap. I like to get my stuff as free as possible. But yeah, but
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
for kids, man. But no, I think you see newspapers dying. You see people increasingly getting frustrated with media. There's a brother here in Fayetteville, Crest Thomas, Faith Today, who puts out really good content. There's going to be I see media, sort of transforming, evolving into something that is less tactile and more hybrid between videos and what's coming out. And so we see this thing. They're shooting themselves in the foot by pulling the diversity and pulling the heart of America out of it. And this is going to be a great opportunity for us to disrupt and to take our message even higher. Sorry.
Love the message of disrupt. What do you think, Payron?
And I would just add to that, media, specifically our corporatized, billionaire-owned entertainment media complex, media is curated, right? So when the news just does not hit our head, it does not just get in our brains. Media, so there's folks out there that have, there's a producer, there's folks that are out there that are writing stuff, and it goes through a filter, it goes through this lens, and on top of that, I think as folks were leading up to the election, we were told that Trump he's a fascist, he's this authoritarian, and then all of a sudden on November 6th, it's like, well, we're gonna go meet with him, and he's not that bad, and we got to give him a shot. So people feel lied to. So there's an authenticity that's missing from that, and this is why I created, Bram, my co-host, he actually was the one that offered that we do this. But this is the reason we did this, to give folks a more authentic connection to what is going on through our lens and through a real lens, right? Where there's no one saying, "Hold on, there's a teleprompter here, and you can't say that, and you can't say this," and how we're feeling. Not just some bullet points, not just some talking points. So I think that's the important piece, that that no one's going to be the person that's going to curate our experience, because for so long our stories have been told to us. Not just because one thing about this country is that people think that they get their perspectives politically via the news. That's not true. It's through our media. It's through entertainment. It's through our movies, our TV shows. When you see who is the leader on TV shows, if it's a white man in a suit, then you're going to start to believe that white men in suits should be the ones running all corporations, right? So we have to start reclaiming our narrative and our power, and that's the power of us having Black-owned media.
I love it. Brothers, thank y'all so much for joining us. This was fire. Again, we're going to make sure that the links are in the chat so that they can go to your podcast and so many others, because we want
There she is.
Such Black media as possible. Oh, they already put Cynthia up. Wow. I didn't even get to put up my
She was the one.
live.
I'm going to say one quick thing about Cynthia Wallace. Cynthia Wallace is the reason I was so plugged into anything when I first moved to Union County 3 years ago. And I'm so thankful for that woman. I appreciate her so much. And I'm so glad to see her on my screen. I just want to just thank her before I jump off.
Well, I appreciate her too, which is why, boom, we have her and so many other folks. Listen, at my core, I am an organizer. I am, after all, a social worker. I teach community organizing every day. And so what we need is, I think sometimes we have this, like I said, they're flooding the zone from DC, and even coming out of Raleigh can be overwhelming. And so you don't know, what can I do in my little corner of the world? Building community is absolutely crucial, and that is one of the best ways to resist. And so I am so excited to have up next a panel of folks. We're absolutely doing this work in so many different areas, in so many different ways. Marcus Bass is the executive director of Advance Carolina. He'll be the one that facilitates this conversation for you all. He'll have, as a partner in this, Dr. Amy Steele, was the founder and executive director of the New North Carolina Project, as well as Cynthia Wallace, the co-founder and executive director of the New Rural Project. Along with them will be William Barber III, who is, William, let me make sure I get the name of your organization right, because we put your logo, it's the Rural, let me get it right.
Rural Beacon Initiative. That's
Rural
right.
Beacon Initiative.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And then we also have Marlene McCabe, who is the chair of the Beaufort County Democratic Party, but is also a regional director for the African American Caucus, part of the North Carolina, the NCDP affiliated organizations. You've heard from me enough. Marcus, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hardy. And it is so good to see everybody at the eve of, not the end of Black History Month, but at the beginning of what we are going to define across this state as we continue to claw back and climb back into this fight for democracy. It gives me great pleasure to be moderating this conversation with so many wonderful folks from across the state that are leading in a very real way. I want to start by reminding everybody, we don't get this multiracial democracy. We don't get this big tent without individuals holding the post across the tent. And the individuals that you're about to hear from are holding down critical ends of a progressive movement across the state that are all in concert. I want to add to that Pastor Gibson said a chorus. These are the individuals that are leading the soprano section, the alto section, the tenor section, the environmental section, the women's rights section, the rural section. And so I'm going to kick it off first by asking our panelists to give us one real sense or introduction of what end of this progressive movement you're holding up, what people you represent in this progressive movement, and what you hope to harness in this kind of move out of Black History Month into building power throughout the rest of the year. And I have to start first with Dr. Amy Steele.
Thank you, Marcus. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Chair Kim, for having this idea so early in the week. That was plenty of time. I mean, really, you did an amazing job. Marcus, you know, New North Carolina Project and New North Carolina Project Action First were really founded to try to help Black and brown people get out the vote. And that was because I ran for office twice, saw more than 1 million people of color across the state who did not vote, and I wanted to fix it. As we got into the work, we learned quickly that people needed their regular issues met. And so now the work of our organization, that one thing that we can help people do as they grab power or need to restore the power that we once had, is to really help take care of some practicalities for people and help them see the connection to voting. So I'll be brief, but I want to say that when you take care of people's needs, you can then have a better opportunity to show them the connection between how their needs were met and voting and politics. And I'll pass it on.
We're going to talk a lot about connections in the time that we have. I want to connect next with another individual that has boldly ran for office, decided that her power was not over because the election was over, and has been building across the state in a major way in rural communities. I want to go next to Ms. Cynthia Wallace.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And thank you also, Dr. Hardy, to have over 100 people with like 3 or 4 days notice show up is your power. And thank you, Marcus. And similar to Amy, she ran twice. I ran once. I ran in 2020 for the 9th Congressional District. And while I wasn't successful in that race, Helen Probst Mills, who ran as well in 2020, we were both still concerned and focused on how could we still help, even if we weren't elected officials, because there's more than one way to really make an impact. And when we were looking at the numbers, I saw that there was over 60,000 Black and brown folks who lived in the rural communities that both of us ran in, about 7 counties that started from Union County, driving down 74. I know Wilma mentioned that, Payron from Union County, all the way through to Hope County and more, and Robinson, Anson, and Richmond. And so we saw that there were 60,000 folks who did not take the opportunity to vote in 2020. That's Black and brown. As we all remember, the race for Supreme Court justice in 2020 was decided by 401 votes out of 5 million that were cast that year. And a lot of times folks think rural places, they're too small. They don't have enough voters to make an impact. And what we did when we started this organization was we talked to all 7 of those counties and said, your non-voters in these voters of color could have easily made the difference. You are powerful, you matter. And so one of the things that we hear about from these folks is they feel unseen and unheard. They feel like nobody pays attention to their issues. And because of that, we've seen a lot of our 18 to 40-ish year olds, in particular in rural counties and across the state, have basically checked out. They've heard a lot of misinformation. They've, not seen their communities progress. And so what our organization strives to do is allow them to have a voice and first of all, listen. Our work, as we always say, begins and ends with listening because these folks just don't see their voices being heard in any kind of conversation. And then we're doing some wonderful programs in I saw it in the chat, in our beauty salons and our barbershops, where we're actually, it's where I met Payron in 2020 too, in a barbershop in Union County when we were running that program. And within a few months, he became the chair of the Union County Democratic Party. And so folks just need these platforms and these opportunities. And New World Project is trying to do that in 7 counties in rural North Carolina.
That's amazing. This is a leaderful movement. This is a leaderful progressive party and a progressive infrastructure. And I think it's important to have many pathways for people to lead. I want to shout out to our precinct chairs and our county chairs across the state. And there are many other opportunities for us to engage in this movement together. And we're going to go from down east to up east or out east, however you call it, depending on what part of the state you're from. The anchor of Black voters in North Carolina lies within Congressional District 1. We want to also, in that frame, go next to Miss Marlene McCabe. Give us a sense of the people that you're holding and the work that you're doing in this moment. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys for inviting me, and especially to Dr. Hardy. The work that I'm doing as precinct, also I'm a precinct chair in a small area down in Belhaven. But the work that I've been doing, I feel that knowledge is power. And if I can't get out into our community as regional director in the 16 counties that I'm over, as chair of Beaufort County, if I can't get out and teach you what this is all about, I need to show you. I don't just want to tell you to call you on the phone, but I do go out also and knock on doors. I get people involved. And I feel like if I don't go to our churches, I meet with the church leaders. I do go into the community right now. Our party's office is actually partnering with the homeless shelter across the street, and a couple of times we'll actually feed during the week. We're also helping with the people that are coming back into the community after being in prison. We're offering our office for available space for people in the community that don't have transportation. You can't get to where you need to go. But then if you can't get to it, then how do we expect you to do better? Because if you can't get to what you need, you can't go to therapy, you can't go to group, then we can't expect you to do anything other than what you're doing. So I've opened our office doors for that. We have group meetings there 3 times a week. I also, in the caucus as regional, I am all over this down here eastern part, from Beaufort County to Dare County to out to Pasco Tank, trying to outreach, because if I don't, then I feel like, how can I expect you to do it? How can I turn it all over to everybody else if I don't work myself? And that's the thing. I put more emphasis on me, on what I'm doing, to make sure that I got people in place to help me to get the word out. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, which takes me to the next most powerful, dynamic individual leading environmental justice, leading a land healing justice movement across the state. When we talk about legacy, when we talk about this movement, you don't get there without forerunners. And now we have not just an individual that lives in the legacy, but is also paving a way for North Carolina forward. I want to turn it next to our brother William Barber III. Talk to us.
Great to see you, brother. And, good evening to all my friends. So as was mentioned, I'm the founder of Rural Beacon Initiative, which is a social enterprise that works to increase BIPOC community ownership in the emerging supply chains of regenerative agriculture and renewable energy. And this is so critical as we look at real issues that have real impact in our communities. Right now, 1 in 6 is the number of households in the United States South that have experienced food insecurity in the last year. There's a deficit of $14 billion in terms of economic loss that is projected for the southeastern United States due to unaddressed climate change. 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions are produced in rural America. 1 in 3 is the number of rural households that have experienced energy insecurity this year, and less than 1% of all farmland is owned by Black farmers. So those are some of the environmental statistics. But in order to fully understand this work, we have to frame this in a broader moment. Understand, and I know that you, Marcus, and others really wrestle with this, that we stand at a crossroads, right? We are at a moment of great change where our systems politically, our systems economically, and our systems socially must either evolve or be pushed beyond the breaking point. And so right now, we face many challenges, some old and some new. Our democratic institutions are facing attack, which, though unprecedented in this moment, is a consequence of too long ignoring elements that are hell-bent on preserving power in the hands of a select few. Elements that will suppress the vote, elements that will usurp our judiciary, elements that will attempt to steal elections, elements that will employ dog whistles and other tactics to divide us rather than deal with issues, and elements that will willfully vote against their own interests for the promise of a trickle-down economic system that will never be. Right now, we are facing the rise of techno-feudalism, where big tech and industry giants no longer compete for our business, but instead control the market as they lead a scramble for unchecked power through deregulation. They promise economic growth, but they run the risk of stripping our natural resources, destabilizing governments, devaluing workers, and fueling an already burgeoning global crime crisis. Right now, we face a reckoning of moral and cultural values, where small people with big egos are telling us that empathy is wrong, that history is a lie, and that our deepest values are nothing more than a mental condition of wokeness. And moments like this demand leadership, vision, and most of all, action. See, the question is not whether change is going to come, it is whether we will shape that change or whether we will let it happen to us. So, in the work that we're doing, we know the stakes here in North Carolina, and especially in rural areas, we know the stakes. We see factories closing, farms struggling, hospitals underfunded, and politicians making decisions without us. But we also must see and understand the opportunity, this chance to build power, to demand investment, and to make sure that the economy of the future includes all of us, not just a select few, but all of us.
That's a word, and we could have a mini mic drop moments in all of these introductions, but I think we have some very real questions to answer right now. We could take a whole week and do this, Dr. Kim, but I think in the time that we have, I want to hear from all of our panelists, and I want to start with you, William. When we think about this idea of how many people are not voting or not engaged, when we think about how many folks are not registered, and the capitalist system has us thinking that there's competition when there's not. There's actually complement. When we're standing together, we can be a lot stronger. In a very real way, I think there's some things that you just named that we should be focused on. Can you tell us ways in which your organization is helping people focus in community, and ways in which that is a complement to building a stronger, progressive, democratic future for all of our people in this year and next year and for years to come?
Absolutely. There are 5 things that we're wrestling with, in the work that we do on the day in, day out. One is wrestling the fact that we're at an economic crossroads. The next economy is being built through clean energy, through broadband, through new industries. And we have to ask, again, that question, will we own our future or will it be decided for us? We know that Black farmers, small businesses, and rural workers must get their fair share, not leftovers from corporate greed. So we push for a couple of things, 3 things. We push for rural-centered investment in clean energy, ensuring that projects benefit local communities, not just corporate stakeholders. We push for job training programs that are tailored to the industries that are moving into our state. So whether it's the advanced manufacturing, sustainable agriculture, or high-speed internet infrastructure. And then we know that we need to push to support Black farmers, small business owners, and cooperatives that build local wealth instead of letting corporations drain resources away. That's the first. Number 2, we know that we got to strengthen community networks. Power is built in relationships. We must strengthen local coalitions, churches, civic groups, labor organizations, small businesses to form a unified voice for rural North Carolina. And so many people on this call are working there. We know that digital access has to be seen as a civil right. We must fight for full broadband expansion to ensure our kids can learn, our businesses can grow, and our communities can connect. Number 3, voter engagement and policy advocacy. I know you all know this, left, right, and upwards. We must register, educate, and mobilize every eligible voter in our communities. That means knocking on doors, holding town halls, and making sure no one sits on the sidelines. We need to advocate for policies that bring resources home. That means funding for schools, infrastructure, healthcare, economic development that prioritizes rural voices. And number 4 and number 5, I'll be brief. We must fundamentally understand and wrestle with what it means to build and wield power in all the forms necessary to build the nation we deserve. Understand this moment, that power properly understood, King said that power properly understood is the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, or economic changes. Power at its best, this is King now, as we talk about Black History Month, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And in doing that, we have to understand no part of the work is unnecessary. Culturally, we must understand how we build power. Economically, we must understand how we build power. Politically, we must understand how we build power. Physically, we must understand how we build power. And in the new age of information and data, we must understand how we build power. And I'll close by quoting the conflicted statesman, Winston Churchill, who said, "You cannot reason with the tiger when your head is in his mouth." Our head, our nation's head is in the mouth of a tiger, don't be mistaken. And it is going to take nothing but the cultivation of power to get it out. But not power just for power's sake, but instead power that helps us rise together, speak together, and work together now.
Come on now. Come on now. The other side is not giving you this right now at the last day of Black History Month. You're hearing it live and direct. Miss Marlene, tell us this. People really don't understand history. They're attacking history right now. And you live in a part of the state that at one time was the economic hub and actually the political hub of our state. Now, individuals are not just trying to erase history, they're trying to whitewash history. What do you tell individuals in community when we're thinking about the attacks on education that aren't in the game? Our children that are at stake. What are some of the things that individuals in your part of the state are really thinking about when they're seeing all of these things being dismantled? And how are you working to give them hope through your work in the Democratic Party?
Okay, so for that, I would have to say this. In my part of the state, down here, it's hard because first of all, I got to get them to see that if you sit on the seat or do nothing, you get nothing. And if you want change, you got to work for it. And if you sit and tell me, I'm not going to go vote because I can't make a difference, then you're showing me not only that you're sitting on the seat or do nothing, but you're really not even trying to learn to do better. So, what I try to do is I try to bring people to the county. I bring local government in. I host meetings. I go out and I get the pastors and I talk to the pastors because, how can you learn without having a teacher? So if I can get the churches involved, if I can get the local officials involved in the community, and if we can go to, because, I hear everything going on social media, but here, we don't have a lot of people that's on social media. Of course, they got their cell phones. They don't realize you're holding a mini computer, but you can look at Facebook, you can look at TikTok. But if I say, send an email or get involved and we send this out, different stuff out to educate them on the cell phone, they're not getting it. They will not even check an email. So we're having issues also. And then we also got to recognize that we got more people can't afford the internet here. And if you do have it, it's not the best of what you got. So then we have to deal with the fact that we can't use a lot of the social media. So then I go out and I go into the communities, and we got a community just 35 miles from here that says we don't want to cross the bridge. So then I have to go over there and take them knowledge. I got to give them the power to work. And right now, their school is about to get closed. But they don't want to come across the water to work. So we got to go to them. And see, and the thing is here, I mean, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but as my grandparents used to say, we ain't tired yet because we got to do it. I got to keep going because, and I tell my son, he's 37, I'm not doing this now because of you. I'm doing this for my grandboys, that 2 and 3-year-old, that I don't want to see. This country is regressing. We're not progressing anymore. And I don't want to see my grandchildren have to be set back to 100 years ago because you guys that's 18 to 45 that don't want to do anything, you're sitting in the back, you can't go vote, you can't do this, all you want to do is say, oh, I'm independent. Independent of what? I'm unaffiliated of what? If you can't make a choice in the beginning at the primaries, then you just let us make a choice for you. So that tells me you'll fall in between anything and I'll say religiously, because I'm also an elder. If you're sitting on the fence or standing there waiting for that paint to dry, and you're just sitting on that fence and you can't get off on left or right, then I'll say to you, as God says, I'll spew you out. You're just sitting there doing nothing. You can't make a choice. You don't have a foothold. You can't even stand up. And if you can't stand up, how are you gonna fight? How are you gonna make a difference in this world?
That's it. That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we have Cynthia. I want you to please pick up right there. Go ahead. I see you off mute. Go.
So as we are ending on Black History Month, one of the quotes that's actually on my Facebook page has been there since MLK weekend from his wife, Coretta Scott King. What she said is that struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. And so what I have been saying is we've got next. It's up to us. Look, there are a lot of folks who are in their 70s and 80s. They have run their races. They're still in the game, but they need us to be there to keep propelling this forward. Look, I know a lot of us worry about, oh, why are we here? Well, guess what? Coretta Scott King knew we were going to be here. She said, you have to keep fighting. And so I urge everybody on this call, those are listening, how are you going to fight? Some of you are going to be protesting and going to rallies and, out in the streets like many of us. But you can also tell your friends about this conversation. Maybe share the link when it's sent. How are you going to make sure that folks know about every election? If you're on this call, you probably vote in every single election. Your friends, whether they're fully well educated or not, have no idea there are municipal elections this year. So there's a role for all of us to play. And let's just go out of this Black History Month and keep doing it every single month. But we can make a change. We can fight back against all the horrific things we're seeing as long as we stay focused and together, and we can get it done.
Let's stay focused and together. Dr. Steele, tell us about that together, the relational organizing work that you're doing in New North. Why is that important, and how is that a complement to the precinct organizing structure that's already taken place across the state and the NCDP?
Yeah, sure. So I want to really underscore the need to take care of our people and convince them or help them see the need of making that connection to their political action. And so one of the things that we at New North Carolina Project are focused on is our 4 pillars. Those are economic mobility, public safety, civic engagement, and housing security. And we run programs under each of our pillars. One of the biggest programs we operate is our weatherization assistance program and energy efficiency program. Organizing people around weatherization, their HVAC systems not working, hot water heaters, being energy inefficient, and then their appliances being energy inefficient is a way that we have used to be able to connect people to their power, connect literally and figuratively around the power of voting. And I think those are some of the things that give me hope and inspiration, especially after major elections like what happened in 2024. We have to meet people where they are. And when we go knocking doors, door to door, daily in communities of color, and we're able to give them a piece of hope by saying, hey, we are going to help you fill out your energy application. We're going to send an energy auditor to your door. And we're going to walk through all the ways your home is energy inefficient. And that program is going to point you to just more opportunities, energy education, the racial inequities around energy over the years, extreme damage to our environment because of some energy waste, all those types of things. That's our in for people. Then we can take it a step further by helping them mobilize economically because we're reducing their gas and their power bills, which is the number one piece of feedback we heard when we were knocking doors. People didn't tell us in 2022, hey, I wish I could vote more. You know, I'm so excited about voting and I wish, you know, voting was something I had to deal with every day. No, people actually told us they couldn't stand politics and that they just wanted us to help them with their everyday lives, including saving money on their power and you know, their overall energy bills. So that's one way we really help to organize relationally with people. And we do that monthly through our ARC family nights. We have a Pancakes and Politics every month. That's where we bring in elected officials to talk to people. We have pancakes, we have sausage, we have eggs, and then we have elected officials who talk to the people about their jobs and what they do. We've had district attorneys. We now have state reps, state senators. We've had city council persons, school board, just judges and other people who are able to make, again, the connection between politics and real life. This is accomplished through our daily work. So I would encourage everybody, including you, Marcus. You know, Marcus, your organization has done phenomenal work with NC Black Alliance and just all the work you do across the state. But I would encourage everyone here to really follow, like, subscribe, all the organizations that have been talked about here. Go to our websites, make a monthly donation, connect, and really seize the opportunity to help Black-led organizations thrive. That's what I would say, because our organizations complement the work of the party, and we are able to side by side work with the work within ourselves, which we ran a whole field cooperative, you know, initiative that knocked over 4 million doors in the state of North Carolina. All of us were a part of that. But these organizations help to get that work done and complement the work of the North Carolina Democratic Party. So we'd love for you to support our organizations because we're out here, boots on the ground, getting this work done when maybe everybody's not thinking about politics 365 days of the year. We're certainly thinking about community organizing 365 days, and then we layer on politics. So that's what I have to say, Marcus, about the hope that we have as we wrap up the celebration of Black History Month.
The party does not have to stop. I'm telling y'all, we don't have to wrap it up. Listen, I know we talked a lot about Black Power this month, and I want to make sure everybody is very clear. We're not free as the people unless we're freeing the most marginalized.
There we go. There he's back. I think he's back. Are you with us, Marcus? You got a little shaky there for a second. Might be a little shaky right now.
I really appreciate this conversation. We're going to keep dropping links in the chat, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, Dr. Hardy. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. You were amazing. And we put every single one of your organization's links in the group chat just a second ago so that you can go and get involved with all of those. And also, Dr. Amy Steele has written a book and a book chapter. So I went ahead and put links to those in there too. So please, 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 by all means, follow these organizations, get involved. And I tell you something that back in my day, when I ran for office, I'm going to show y'all something. I showed this to Payron when I was interviewed for his podcast, but there is the Fayetteville Press, Black-owned newspaper that had all of us, all of these amazing Black women running for office on the front cover of the paper. And we have not stopped trying to be of service and trying to do something good for our community. And I love the way you phrased it, Marcus. They knew their service wasn't over just because the campaign was. So go and find these folks. But something I hated during running for office was asking for money. And then one day I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, you either want to win the race or you don't. And so I started asking people for money. Donate to these organizations. The work they're doing is amazing, and they can't do it without some sort of sustaining funds. So I'm going to tell you to vote for candidates. I'm going to tell you to donate to these organizations. Marcus is so humble. He didn't spend no time talking about Advanced Carolina. I'm so mad, but he's doing amazing, amazing, incredible work. And so his link is there in the chat. I want everybody to please go check out these organizations. Thank you all so very much for joining us. I'm going to move us to our next section because you've now heard about a bunch of different ways that you can get involved in things. How you can be a change agent, which is language that social workers use, I know. But here's a way that you might not be thinking about. We need you to run for office, especially local office. And this is the year of the municipal elections. And so it's so important that you consider making sure that your voice is heard and you're on the ballot. And so I'm going to get out of the way so that my third vice chair, Elijah King, can facilitate a conversation with Tyler Swanson, who's going to be one of my most favorite people in the world and a fellow from the Hunt Institute. He's on the Wake County School Board. And Preston Blakely. I don't know if Preston was able to make it because he was so busy this evening accepting an award that he forgot he was accepting. I guess it must be nice to just get so many awards.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm here, Dr. Hardy.
Yes. Okay, let us make sure that we get him. I saw your name was on there, but I was teasing because apparently congratulations are in order, sir, for an award that you have won. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Elijah, Tyler, and Preston take it from here.
And can we get a spotlight for Preston as well?
I've requested.
All right, good. All righty. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Dr. Hardy, for allowing me to facilitate such a great conversation. Hello, Mr. Swanson. It's nice to see you again. I was happy to see you last weekend. And we're going to get started here after we get a spotlight from Mr. Blakely. Hey, Lisa. Keon, Dorian.
Let me see what I can try and do. Hold on. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I need to do something,
You've got to cut your camera on, Mayor.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think it is on.
You're good.
All righty. So we're going to get started here. So this year, in 2025, there are 1,753 municipal seats up for election. So Democrats have 686 of those, Republicans have 638, and affiliates have 404. So there is an opportunity here for young Black men in local elected office. And so because we represent and we bring crucial perspectives that reflect the reality of so many marginalized communities. And so with that, I'm going to start with you, Preston, or Mayor Blakely, rather. As a young Black person running for office and serving in Western North Carolina, what unique challenges have you faced, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. First I want to highlight, and this may have already been said, I'm sorry as I was late accepting the award I forgot I was receiving. But I also want to highlight, all the young Black men that are in elected positions in North Carolina that are Democrats, besides myself, and Tyler's here as well. But, we have Councilmember Chris Suggs in Kinston, who's just wonderful, right? We have Jordan Lopez, Representative Jordan Lopez at the General Assembly now. We have, Caleb Theodro, Senator, so many amazing Black men that are in elected office. And I just want to raise that up because that is so important, because our history isn't, it isn't yesterday, it's today. It is happening now. And so I want to be sure to highlight those good folk right there. But I've had the opportunity to serve in elected roles since 2019 for the town of Fletcher, which is just south of Asheville. So please come visit us. We are certainly impacted by Hurricane Helene, and it has been a time, I will tell you that. I've been elected since 2019. Prior to being mayor, I was a council member. And, I was fresh out of grad school, 24 years old, running my first campaign. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing. And, I had to figure it out along the way. And I talked to my mayoral predecessor, Rod Whiteside, and he was the first Black mayor of Fletcher. And I said, Rod, we're in a community that's, 89, 90% white and 3% black, a community that doesn't really look like me and many times doesn't think like me. And I asked him how he did it. What were your successes to campaigning to get you where you are today? And I just heard some folk at the New North Carolina Project talking about showing up and knocking on doors and talking to folk and engaging in your community. And that's what I did. I knocked on doors, I made phone calls, I did the hard work to get elected in 2019, and I won with about 70% of the vote and became a council member for the Fletcher Town Council. And then 2 years later, I decided to run for mayor, which it was a different election. I mean, it was the most divisive election the town of Fletcher has ever seen. And, we unfortunately had moments that made the news. And, I replicated that same campaign strategy of, knocking on doors, making phone calls, talking to voters, meeting them where they're at every single day. And, a couple of days before my election, there was a flyer put out all around town about me. And on that flyer was dog whistles. And, I'd go as far as say is, they brought the bullhorn. And, on that flyer, it said, I wanted racially allocated resources. And, I wanted low income housing, because who doesn't want housing, right? And, all these other crazy things that are really unfortunate. And, nevertheless, I continue to persevere and, push through. And I ended up getting elected as mayor. And it's, been one of the greatest honors of my life because, as you all know, this local level of government, it's the things that touch you every single day. It's your police officers, it's your roads, it's your parks, it's your schools, like I'm sure Tyler's going to be talking about. It's the things that really matter. And so, despite, some of the challenges I faced while campaigning and while being mayor, I've been really grateful. And I feel like I've been able to accomplish a lot in my tenure so far.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. And I want everyone to know that Mayor Blakely went to one of the greatest colleges in North Carolina, UNCG, where I go as well. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Now, Mr. Swanson, I want to ask you a question. What role do you see for school boards in fostering that diversity, that equity, that inclusion in the classroom and our extracurricular activities across our state?
All right. Well, first, thank you for that. And Dr. Hardy, thank you for pulling all this together to highlight Black excellence that we're going to celebrate 365 days. It doesn't just stop today or tomorrow. It's going to keep going because I think Black joy is the key to resistance in this moment. And to Mayor Blakely, it's always great to be in communication with you. And, I look up to you and the great brothers that you mentioned, and we support one another because it is hard out here being young Black electeds in districts that do not reflect the communities that you serve. And so my race was very similar to yours, Preston, but to your question, Elijah, I do think now more than ever, our schools are safe havens for so many students. And this attack that we're hearing and these dog whistle politics is there to divide. And I shared when I ran for school board in Wake County, and I continue to say this, that we can't have businesses coming to our states or our communities without having a strong and thriving school system. And now more than ever, we are seeing the attacks from the state legislator who is using a divide and conquer method. From the federal government, it's the same thing. And so we need true folks who believe in public education to stand true to the cause and to support and show up. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just a Black thing. As so many folks such as Moms for Liberty and these other extremists have deemed it, it is making sure that every person has access, that they see themselves in their curriculum, in their books, and in their buildings. When I was a teacher for Wake County, I was the first Black male teacher that many of my students ever had. I currently am the only Black male on the Board of Education, so I understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is the backbone and the fabric of our nation. And when we have folks that are saying that they want to eliminate it or get rid of it, you're erasing Black history, your Black culture, Black existence. And I think this is where we have to step up and fight back and push against the narrative and showing the beauty in our diversity.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for that. And there's something to be said about running a seat, building a multi kind of level coalition of people And then leading, the difference between leading and knowing that there are a group of people that don't want you there in the first place. And so my next question is, this is going to be to the both of you. How can more people of color be encouraged to run for local office, knowing that it is a challenge to get into those seats? And why is it so crucial for communities to see us at the table?
Sure. Well, when I ran 3 years ago, I was not projected to win this seat. I ran in a seat that has been a Republican-controlled seat for decades. I ran against someone who was unqualified, who used divisive language, divisive rhetoric to divide and cause harm to communities. And so that person was defeated for this seat and was defeated again from running DPI as well. And so I think you can't wait for someone to give you that baton. You can't wait for folks to tap you when you know who you are, when you know what you bring to the table, and you know who your values. That is what pushed me and encouraged me to keep going, because oftentimes, I'm sure, Preston, you heard the same thing. We get told, wait your turn, or give me a little bit more time. And so sometimes the more you wait and the more you allow someone to pass you that baton, it may never happen. So I think we have to find a way to build that bench, build that support system, stay engaged with folks who are in these seats that are doing this work, and never take no for an answer. And the most important thing, and I do know Preston this may resonate with you as well, but donate. Oftentimes you see at the local level, those dollars do not come to local candidates and those races are often won by less than 5 to 10 votes. And so when you see folks that are running for Board of Education, that are running for mayor, understand these are folks that are going to affect what's happening in your lives much quicker than what happens at the state and local level. Board of Educations are now very highly politicized, which fighting for kids should not be a political issue. It's a moral issue. It's a just issue. We have folks who are trying to divide and fire and just cause harm. And when I was a teacher, and even now, my students never had a D, an R, or a U by their name. They were students. And I think that now more than ever, we need those champions to step up and to rise to the occasion and to support, and most importantly, show up. Show up to those school board meetings, show up to those city council meetings, and show up to those county commissioner meetings, and be in the resistance, be in the movement for change with us.
And what about you, Mayor Blakely?
Yeah, Tyler, beautiful words. Somebody once told me that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that full fledged. And we have a real opportunity to be elected at the local level. And a lot of these races at the local level, they end up being uncontested or going under the radar. And again, these are the things that impact you so much on a day-to-day basis. In 2015, when my predecessor on council ran, he got 67 votes, period. 67 votes. And so this was a race that continued to go under the radar, under the radar, under the radar. And the same things kept on happening in my community, right? To the same people were being overlooked and overlooked and overlooked. And we matter, and we should be at that table every single time. And these local candidates need your support. And these folk, you all can be at the table too. And it looks different for everybody. Maybe your route isn't an elected official, but you want to know what? You can certainly show up to your city council meeting and you can talk and you can speak your mind. You can go to your county commissioner meeting, you can show up and you can speak your mind. You can go to your school board meeting and you can speak your mind. You can email us, you can call us, and you can speak your mind. And your voice matters, right? And so if you have the opportunity to run and you can do this, there are a multitude of people that will support you, including, I know, the North Carolina Democratic Party, because they have supported me time in and time out. And so when I made that run, I called Dorian Palmer, and I think Dorian was the president of the Young Democrats of North Carolina at the time. And Dorian said, Preston, how can I help you? And he meant it. And he meant it. And he donated to my campaign. So there are so many people out here that will support you and make you the next mayor, I hope, the next city council member, the next school board member, whatever it may be, or you just a community, avid community goer to your city council meeting, that matters too. But whatever you need, we're here to support you. And I hope we see more Black faces on these school boards, on these city councils, on these county commissioners, anywhere at the local level, because it matters.
If I
Wow.
when,
Go ahead.
keep in mind, Governor McCrory did not just become a governor, he started at the local level. Many of those folks on Jones Street did not just magically appear. They started at the local level and matriculated their way up to cause harm. So if they're causing harm at the local level, we need good folks getting in good trouble at every level of our government to advocate for our people.
And thank you for mentioning that. And we're running out of time here, but as we're wrapping up, what can people do right now? What can we do locally to serve as leaders in our communities, make those relationships? As Cynthia Wallace was saying, the work begins and ends with listening. And so other than listening, what can people be doing right now? And that's for both of you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, showing up. I mean, there's so many places you can show up at. Again, one of my successes that I found campaigning or just being an elected official is showing up. That's half the battle. So you can go to your county precinct, right, and you can see your county Democratic Party and see what they're doing, because best believe they're probably knocking on doors. They're probably holding events. They're probably doing things to touch people on every single day and talking about the issues that matter to you and me. When we're talking about transportation, when we're talking about funding our schools, when we're talking about making sure DEI is still around, right? I mean, so show up somewhere. I know everybody's capacity is different, but there's places you can be, and I think people will help you.
What about you?
Absolutely. Amen. Finding ways, one of the most for those who are not, who are afraid to knock doors or afraid to make phone calls, write a postcard.
Mm-hmm.
Call 10 folks to make sure that they're registered for an upcoming municipal election. Make sure they're not on Jefferson's list. It's the first thing to do. And then most importantly, if you're feeling that you want to do more to serve your community and to be bold in this moment, run. Local elections matter. They always matter. And just because we may have had a slight setback in the presidential election last year, we can set ourselves up in our communities to win locally in these municipal elections that are at the off cycle, to build for our big victories in 26 when we have a U.S. Senate seat on the ballot, when we have Justice Earls who will be getting reelected in 26. So there's something for us to do between now and 26, but sitting on the sidelines, not doing anything is not the option for us to win.
Well, you guys heard it right here, and I'm going to reiterate that number that we heard for the crowd. This year we have 1,753 seats, municipal seats up for election. And so, like Tyler Swanson said, run, and we will support you with all that we have. And like Kim said earlier, when folks do run, vote for these candidates. Vote for them, donate to them. And so we're going to be putting links in the chat for upcoming trainings for those municipal offices. Thank you both so much. And back to you, Dr. Hardy.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you, Elijah. We got to take a selfie next time we see each other, because that's what we do. Preston, congratulations again on your award. Tyler, as always, thank you for always saying yes every time I ask you for something at the 11th hour. We appreciate you, brothers. You're inspiring and you're leaders, and we're so looking forward to supporting the next things that you do. So thank you so very much. And speaking of the next things that we do, we are at the point now where we need a call to action. You've been listening, you've been excited, you've been inspired. And so now we need to know, what exactly is it that you do? And so I've been taking notes, as I hope you all do. I'm a nerdy professor, so of course I'm taking notes. But I've been taking notes on all the things that I've heard our speakers say you all can do right now. And so your call to action is: give our legislators some grace. Trust that their silence does not mean that they're not doing anything. We heard Senator Batch say that there is strategy. And sometimes that strategy has to be communicated in a subversive manner. So let us give them their grace that they need. And then also, there are other things we can do. We'll talk about it in a second. I've heard people saying that this is leaderful. That was Marcus said, this is a leaderful moment, and that this is the beginning of something. If we go out and do, if Marlene said, if I can't go out and do the work, then how can I ask you to do it? All of these folks that you saw started something from nothing except the passion and the belief that there's more work to get done and that they have the power to do that. If you spent any time listening to me last cycle, you heard me say a lot. You have more power than you realize, and you have more power than you're using. And the people that you have heard tonight recognize that they have power and they're using it. And so we want to make sure that you feel empowered to do the same thing. So follow all of those social media links, all the ones who are doing podcasts, all the ones who are doing writing books, all of those things, all those links, all the organizations you heard about. Join them, support their work, get inspired to maybe create something of your own. If you want to do something through NCDP, we have options for you too. So maybe you are considering running for office. So our very, very fantastic training director, Christy Barr, is putting on a training called Running for Office, Resources to Kickstart Your Campaign on March the 5th at 12 p.m. We're going to make sure that all the links are in the chat so that you can sign up for these things right away. And they're always recorded. So if you can't make it, you can go to the NCDP website and take the training. But if you're there in real time, it gives you an opportunity to have your individual questions answered, but you can always reach out to any of us. Maybe you want to become a precinct leader. This is the most granular level of leadership. This is what I call the walk your dog level of leadership. These are the people that live in the community that you're in, and you can say, hey, don't forget, we have a precinct meeting this weekend. Precinct organizing is coming up, and you'll be hearing a lot from NCDP about the need to organize these precincts. This might be an opportunity for you to lead at a very grassroots level. There is also how to influence your elected officials. Maybe you're not necessarily ready to get on the ballot, but you sure as hell want to keep the ones who are on the ballot held accountable. And you want to make your voices heard, just like Preston said. Show up at these meetings, make your voices heard. But there's a way to do that so that it's most effective. We're having a training on March 17th about how to influence your elected officials. And again, we'll put all of those links in the chat. Maybe you're more like me, the rabble rouser type. You can join us for Pack the Gallery on Wednesday, March 19th in Raleigh. We can literally look down and see them and let them know that we see them and what they're doing. And we will not forget the things that they do that cause us pain and cause harm to the rest of our communities. Another call to action I have for you is don't just care about people when you're the one that needs care. It is time for us to come together as a community. This event was not meant to just highlight the historical contributions of my ancestors, but to show the work of the ones who are going to be ancestors one day that they're still doing. And I'm so delighted about how multiracial this group is. I can see so many of your faces, and it means a lot to know that you took some time out of your night, not just to join me and all of these wonderful speakers, but to say, I want to be an ally. And so we will be working together, me and the training director, on an allyship series. To me, what does it mean to be someone from outside of a community who really wants to help and advocate for that community? Now, I know that we're getting close on time, and there's a lot of things in the chat. And if there are questions, I will make sure to get them to the folks that they're aimed at to ensure that they get you those answers back. But we're going to move into the closing, and it is only right and proper that we end Black History Month with lifting every voice and singing. And so we're going to end with Kirk Franklin and his choir doing just that.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound. Let it resound. As the rolling sea. I like this part right here. Come on. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught. Let us march on. Till victory is won. Now we add a little something to it. Just to encourage you. We're gonna take you to church later. Let's go. We'll keep marching right until the victory is won. To all my brothers out there. Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won. To all my sisters in the struggle. Keep believing, sister, till the victory is won. Till that day. Till that day comes. Hey. Let us march on. To victory. Till victory is won.
That does it for us, folks. Thank you so very, very much. Really, really appreciate it. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Good night.
Great program, Dr. Hardy.